You have 30 days to move out. We've sold this apartment to Emily." My mother, Margaret, delivered that sentence like she was announcing a change in weather, not tossing me out of the home I'd lived in for over a decade. Her manicured fingers tapped rhythmically on the marble counter I had personally chosen, as if this betrayal were just another item on her perfectly arranged checklist. Standing beside her was my younger brother, Robert, his arm wrapped protectively around Emily's shoulders and his eyes avoided mine. Emily looked down, one hand resting on her small but growing belly. She didn't say a word. "You're barely home these days," Robert added, trying to sound diplomatic. "You're always off catering weddings or events. Emily's expecting. She needs a real home." A real home. I glanced around the kitchen where I had stayed up late, baking hundreds of test batches, where I'd hand-fed my grandmother Rosa in her final days. This was where I grieved, built, failed, and tried again. It wasn't just an apartment. It was the only place I had ever truly made my own. Every inch of it bore my effort, my sacrifice, and now they were handing it over like it was theirs to give. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I took a long sip of my coffee, watching a flicker of uncertainty cross my mother's face at my calmness. Then I stood up. "I think we should talk properly," I said. I walked upstairs to my home office, the same space my mother had once criticized. "A proper lady keeps a guest room," she used to say, wrinkling her nose. From the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, I pulled out a worn folder, edges frayed, contents pristine. I returned to the kitchen, placed it on the counter, and opened it without a word. "You might want to see this before you plan my removal." Robert stepped forward and flipped it open. Emily leaned in, hesitant. My mother looked at it like she expected the papers to dissolve into dust. "This," I said evenly, "is the original deed. The apartment is in my name. And here," I turned the page, "are the ownership documents for the building next door. Both transferred to me 3 years ago. Signed, notarized, legal." Margaret's face turned pale. Her confident posture faltered. She grabbed the pages, flipping frantically through them like sheer will could change the ink. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "Your father and I never... This can't be real." "It is," I said simply. "Mr. Jenkins, Grandma's lawyer, handled everything. There's even a video of her signing and explaining her decisions." "You knew about this?" Robert demanded. "And you just let us plan the sale?" "I knew," I said quietly. "And I waited, just like Grandma told me. Sometimes the best way to see the truth is to let people reveal themselves." Silence fell, sharp and heavy. I remembered that moment so clearly. The day Grandma Rosa placed the envelope in my hands. "They'll come for it," she said. "Your mother never forgave me for keeping it from her, but this building isn't about them. It's about what you've built." She had seen all of this coming, and she had trusted me to stand when the time came. I turned to Emily. "The apartment next door is available. It's bright, has 2 bedrooms. You can rent it. Market rate." "Rent?" Robert barked. "You'd charge your own brother?" I raised an eyebrow. "Would you prefer the luxury units down the block? Double the rent, half the character." My mother stood up, clutching her purse like a shield. "This isn't over," she said, voice trembling. I met her gaze, calm, clear. "No," I replied. "It's just beginning." She paused at the doorway, her eyes scanning my face. "You've changed." I gave a small smile. "No, I just stopped pretending to be the daughter you wanted me to be." The morning after our confrontation, I stood in the prep kitchen piping rosettes onto a wedding cake when my phone rang. The screen lit up with my father's name. David, absent from the family ambush, but clearly not out of it. "Your mother is beside herself," he said, without so much as a hello. His voice had that familiar, disappointed tone. "How could you embarrass the family like that in front of Emily?" I steadied the piping bag, breathing slowly. "By stopping you from illegally selling my apartment?" I asked calmly. "Don't be difficult, Linda. We were trying to help your brother. Family looks out for family." I bit back a bitter laugh. Interesting. I don't remember anyone looking out for me when I was sleeping on a cot next to Grandma's hospital bed, or when I was trying to launch my business from this very kitchen, maxing out credit cards to buy flour. There was a long pause, then a sigh. Your mother wants to consult a lawyer about challenging the deed. She can try, I replied. But Mr. Jenkins has every document, including a video of Grandma explaining her decisions and signing each page. If you want to burn money on legal fees chasing a fantasy, be my guest. He hung up without another word. I set my phone aside and returned to the cake. My hands were steady. My heart, not so much. Later that afternoon, a soft knock echoed from the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Emily stood on the porch, looking unsure and alone. She held up a white bakery bag like a peace flag. I brought croissants, she said. And the lemon tarts you like. I let the door swing wider. They better be warm. She smiled, nervous, but real. I gestured toward the kitchen. We sat at the counter, the scent of butter and sugar filling the room. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she finally said, I didn't know. About the deed. About any of it. I waited. Robert told me your parents were giving us the apartment as a baby gift, she continued. That you were okay with moving since you travel so much for work. I never questioned it. You never asked me directly, I said. She looked down. I should have. I was scared to rock the boat. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. You didn't want to be difficult, I said. She nodded. I stood, walked over to the side cabinet and pulled out another folder. The apartment next door is still empty. Same layout. Beautiful light. You can rent it. Market rate. She looked surprised. Even after everything? Because you're the only one who's apologized, and because I think you're starting to see them clearly. Emily took a deep breath. Robert won't like paying rent. He says family shouldn't charge family. I raised an eyebrow. And how has that worked out for him? That made her smile, just a little. I want our baby to grow up in a home we chose, she said finally, not one stolen from someone else. I nodded. I'll have the renovation plans ready this week. First month free while the work gets done. She met my gaze directly. This time, it's my decision. Not Robert's. Not your mother's. Mine. For what it's worth, I said, I think that's the first real choice you've made in years. Just then, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen and sighed. Family group chat. A new message from Margaret. Family meeting this Sunday at 2 p.m. Your father and I have made decisions regarding both properties. Attendance is mandatory. Emily read over my shoulder. What are they planning now? She asked, voice tense. I deleted the message. Nothing that matters, I said. They don't own anything anymore. She hesitated. Robert will expect me to go. They'll want me to stand against you. And what do you want? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the kitchen, at the warm light falling across the tiles, at the half-finished cake beside us. I want to choose for myself, she said softly. I want to live somewhere that feels like ours, not a trophy. I nodded slowly. Then let's make that happen. And for the first time since all this began, something shifted. This wasn't just about protecting what was mine. It was about showing someone else how to take back what was theirs, too. Sunday came with crisp autumn air. The kind of day Grandma Rosa used to say was too beautiful to waste on nonsense. I arrived at exactly 2 p.m., not a minute early. The driveway was full. Everyone was already inside. My parents' suburban home looked exactly as it always had, pristine, over-decorated, and cold. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. My mother sat on her velvet armchair like a monarch preparing for trial. My father hovered behind her, arms crossed. Robert stood near the window, pacing. Various aunts and uncles occupied the other chairs, clearly invited to serve as an audience rather than participants. Emily sat apart from them, her hands folded in her lap. When she saw me, she nodded, a quiet but clear signal. So glad you decided to join us, my mother said, her voice icy. I wouldn't miss it, I replied, staying on my feet. Though I'm not sure why we're meeting. The ownership of the properties is already settled. My father stepped forward, holding a familiar-looking folder. His expression was unreadable. We've been reviewing the circumstances under which your grandmother made her final decisions, he began. Our lawyer believes there are grounds to question her state of mind at the time. Really? I asked, keeping my tone even. You mean the months when I was taking care of her daily, while all of you were mysteriously too busy to visit? You manipulated her, Robert snapped. You turned her against us when she was vulnerable. Before I could respond, Emily stood up. Her voice was soft but unwavering. No, she didn't. I was there sometimes, remember? When none of you were, Grandma was sharp. She knew exactly what she wanted. The room fell into stunned silence. Emily, dear, my mother said, trying to keep her voice gentle. You're pregnant, and emotions can run high. Perhaps— Don't dismiss me, Emily interrupted this has nothing to do with hormones. Sarah offered us a chance to start over. A fair lease. A home. And you wanted to steal one instead. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the living room television. Within seconds, Grandma Rosa's face filled the screen. She looked straight into the camera. I'm recording this because I know my daughter, she said. She never forgave me for not handing her the buildings when she married. But this isn't just property. It's a legacy, and Sarah is the one who understands that. The video showed her signing the deed, stating her wishes clearly and confirming everything in the presence of Mr. Jenkins, her attorney. When it ended, no one said a word. There's more, I said calmly. Medical evaluations confirming her full mental competence. Witness testimonies. Every document is in order. How far do you want to take this? My father slowly lowered the folder to the coffee table. My mother was pale, gripping the arm of her chair. But it was Robert who broke the silence. You knew? He turned to Emily, his voice shaking. You've been talking to her? Emily lifted her chin. Yes, because she's the only one who's been honest with me. I looked at Robert. The renovation plans for the apartment next door are finished. If you're still interested, the offer still stands. Then I added firmly, but this ends here. No more games, no more threats. The buildings are mine. That's final. My mother rose from her chair with trembling hands. I think we should all leave. We need time to process. As people began filing out, Emily lingered beside me. I'd still like to see those renovation plans, she said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. For our new home. Outside, the sun was low on the horizon, casting golden light across the front lawn. As we walked toward our cars, Emily turned to me. You know they'll never forgive us. I looked toward the sky and smiled. Maybe not, but we're building something better. 6 weeks after the family meeting, the third-floor unit in the building next door was nearly unrecognizable. The scuffed hardwood floors had been restored to a warm sheen. The walls were painted a soft cream, and natural light poured in through the tall windows. The kitchen, once outdated and cramped, now boasted marble countertops, open shelving, and a farmhouse sink. It was the kind of transformation I knew Grandma Rosa would have loved. Simple, functional, beautiful. Emily stood in the middle of the living room, one hand resting on her now prominent belly. I didn't think it would turn out this beautiful, she whispered. It feels like a real beginning. I handed her the lease. 1-year term, market rate. First month free, since you'll be finishing the last touches during the move-in. She took the papers, holding the pen for a moment. Robert still doesn't agree with all this, but I'm not waiting for his permission anymore. I nodded. This is your decision, your home, not theirs. As the weeks passed, I watched Emily slowly become someone new, or rather, someone she had once been. She started arranging flowers again, taking small orders from local businesses and private clients. I even hired her for a few events, wedding centerpieces, holiday arrangements. Business partner, I teased one afternoon as she carefully tucked pale roses into a centerpiece for a bridal shower. She smiled, cheeks flushed. Maybe. There was light in her eyes now. It reminded me of who she'd been before she was Robert's wife, before she was swallowed by my family's expectations. Robert, on the other hand, was struggling. He complained about paying rent, mumbled about principles and family loyalty. But Emily didn't back down, and that, more than anything, seemed to shake him. As for my parents, they rotated through stages of silence, guilt-tripping, and passive-aggressive voicemails. I didn't block them, but I didn't engage either. Not anymore. I wasn't the same daughter who used to tiptoe around their moods, hoping for approval. I didn't need their validation. I had the deeds, the documents, the community, and I had Grandma Rosa's voice in the back of my mind. Let them huff and puff, Linda. They can't blow down a house that's built right. Meanwhile, the building had come alive in ways I hadn't expected. Maria, the seamstress on the first floor, started hosting stitch and chat evenings, women from the neighborhood bringing mending, stories, and empanadas. Mr. Chen, who ran the tiny used bookstore, added a reading nook for children. The sound of quiet laughter and conversation now echoed down the halls. One night, after cleaning up from an event, I found myself reaching for the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was Grandma's last letter. The paper had faded a bit, but her handwriting was as firm as ever. Property is more than bricks and paperwork. It's a chance to build something lasting, not just for you, but for others too. That's what makes it sacred. I closed the letter, pressed my palm against it, and sat quietly for a moment. The weight of it all, past and present, settled into something that finally felt like peace. A few days later, Emily brought me a bouquet she'd arranged herself. Sunflowers, eucalyptus, soft lavender. Thank you, she said simply, for giving me this space, for believing I could build something. I didn't give you anything, I told her. You took it, that's the difference. We stood there for a moment, in a home she had helped shape, in a building I had fought to protect, in a neighborhood slowly becoming what Grandma had always dreamed of, a place where people could root themselves and grow. I looked out the window at the golden leaves fluttering down onto the sidewalk below. This wasn't just victory, this was reclamation. By the time winter settled in, the building had found a rhythm, a hum of quiet purpose that reminded me of Grandma Rosa's kitchen in the early mornings. Warm, steady, full of something that felt like love. Maria's tailoring shop on the ground floor was thriving. She often brought me empanadas wrapped in foil, always with a smile and a story. Your grandmother used to say my crust was better than hers, she told me once, laughing. She lied, of course. Mr. Chen, the retired professor-turned-bookstore owner, started holding Saturday morning readings for neighborhood kids. The hallway smelled of cinnamon and old pages on those days, and it made the building feel alive. And Emily? She blossomed. She moved into the new apartment before the renovations were fully complete, insisting on helping choose every fixture, every color. She painted the nursery herself, soft mint green with golden stars on the ceiling. She named her floral business Second Bloom, and she was already receiving steady orders from local cafes and offices. Robert remained distant. He paid the rent, barely on time, always with some excuse. He didn't attend the tenant potlucks or greet the neighbors. He seemed deflated. But Emily stood taller every day. One afternoon, I found her on my doorstep with a box of lemon lavender cupcakes. I booked my first wedding job, she said, eyes glowing. You made these? I asked, taking a bite. She nodded. I remembered you said they were Grandma Rosa's favorite combination. I smiled. She would have been proud. That night, after cleaning up from a private tasting event, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, wrapped in a soft cloth, was the last letter Grandma Rosa had written to me. The paper had yellowed with time, but the ink remained strong. Linda, you'll be tempted to believe that owning something is enough, but it's what you do with it that matters. Property isn't the prize, it's the beginning. I read it again, slowly. Then I tucked it back into its place, feeling something settle inside me. Not anger, not triumph, something steadier, like purpose. The holidays crept in, bringing with them a familiar flurry of messages from my parents. At first, silence, then guilt. You're really going to leave us out of everything? This is your mother's favorite time of year. Robert says you're turning Emily against us. But Emily wasn't being turned. She was choosing. She attended holiday gatherings at the building instead, bringing handmade wreaths and warm cider, sitting on the floor with the neighborhood kids, laughing in a way I hadn't heard since she first married into our family. The most surprising moment came 2 days before Christmas when my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. I'd like to come by, she said. Not for anything formal. I want to bring lemon squares and the recipe, if you're willing. I paused, then said simply, the door will be open. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. Not because of her appearance, but because she was quiet, thoughtful. She brought the tart lemon squares in a faded tin, and she didn't ask for anything in return. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about what your grandmother said, about stewardship. I expected everything to be handed to me. I never learned how to build anything myself." For a moment, I saw her not as the woman who tried to take what was mine, but as a daughter who had never been taught how to earn anything of her own. It didn't erase the past, but maybe it was the start of something else. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My schedule was clear, and the next catering event wasn't for another 3 days. But when I opened the door, I found Robert standing there. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in presence. The usual confidence, the smug certainty, gone. His coat was slightly wrinkled, and his eyes had shadows beneath them. "Can we talk?" he asked, shifting his weight like he might bolt at any moment. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside and gestured toward the kitchen. He sat down at the counter, the same place where he'd once stood beside our mother, telling me to leave my own home. I poured 2 cups of coffee and placed one in front of him. He stared into it for a long while before speaking. "Emily's happy, happier than I've ever seen her. The apartment, the flower business, even how she talks to Mom now, it's different." I stayed quiet. I didn't realize how much we'd been living by their rules, how much we let them shape everything. Still, I waited. "I'm sorry," he finally said, "for trying to take your home, for not standing up to them sooner, for believing I deserved what you had built without ever earning it." I nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. "What changed?" I asked softly. He looked down at his hands. "When Emily signed the lease without asking me, I was furious. But then I watched her. She decorated that apartment like it was her first real chance at being herself. And it hit me. I never gave her that chance. I didn't even give it to myself." I studied him. There was no performance in his voice, no expectation of redemption. "You still paying the rent?" I asked. He managed a faint smile. "Every month, on time. I got a job with a consulting firm downtown. First time I've had a boss who isn't a family friend." I stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were blueprints, design plans for the last vacant commercial space in the building. "There's a tenant considering this unit," I said. "A small bakery. Young couple, passionate but struggling with funding." Robert raised an eyebrow. "And you're showing this to me because—" "Because I want you to understand something Grandma tried to teach me," I said. "Property isn't just a shield, it's a foundation. And foundations are meant to support others, not just yourself." He opened the envelope and studied the plans in silence. "Like Emily with her flowers, like you with your catering." I nodded. "Exactly." He looked up at me. "Do you think it's too late to start over?" I considered the question, then I poured him another cup of coffee. "Only if you keep standing still." Later that night, as I helped Emily finalize the guest list for her baby shower, she glanced up from her notepad. "Mom called," she said. "She wants to come early and help decorate. She asked if she could bring lemon squares and—" "The recipe." I raised an eyebrow. "The family recipe she never shared with anyone?" Emily nodded, smiling. "Maybe she's learning." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I looked around the apartment, at the fresh flowers in the vase, the stack of baby books on the coffee table, the laughter drifting up from Maria's shop below. Something had shifted, not just in Emily, not just in Robert, in all of us. Maybe it was slow, maybe it was messy, but it was real. We weren't just reclaiming buildings, we were reclaiming ourselves. The morning of Emily's baby shower arrived with soft, golden light pouring through the windows. I had been up since dawn, baking, brewing coffee, arranging platters with care. The smell of lemon, sugar, and fresh rosemary floated through the air like a gentle invitation. Maria showed up first, arms full of empanadas and handmade baby blankets. "From the ladies in my sewing circle," she said, beaming. "They all voted. It had to be pink." Chen arrived next, carrying a selection of children's books tied together with ribbon. "Books are seeds," he said. "You plant them early." Emily followed a few minutes later, radiant and glowing. She wore a flowing lavender dress and carried a tray of cupcakes with edible flowers she'd arranged herself. Second Bloom's latest experiment, she grinned. We worked side by side, transforming my apartment into a celebration of new life. Not just the baby growing inside Emily, but the new lives we were all building. Your mom texted, Emily said as we finished setting the table. She wants to come early. She says she's bringing lemon squares, and she offered to teach us the recipe. I raised an eyebrow. I'll believe it when I see it. But sure enough, at 10:15 sharp, Margaret arrived. She looked older, softer. She carried the lemon squares in a vintage tin and a neatly typed recipe on cream-colored stationery. I thought it was time someone else learned how to make them, she said, almost shyly. We exchanged a glance. There was still a long road between us, but for the first time I saw a flicker of effort. And for now, that was enough. The apartment filled quickly with friends, neighbors, and more food than we could possibly eat. Maria's empanadas were gone in minutes. Mr. Chen read a short poem. Emily unwrapped gifts with tears in her eyes. Hand-knit baby booties, a flower press set, a tiny apron embroidered with her new business's logo. She's going to grow up surrounded by people who really see her, Emily said quietly. That's all I ever wanted. I stepped back and looked out the window. The two buildings stood side by side, sturdy, sunlit, alive. Down below, the sidewalk bustled with tenants and customers. Maria waved to a young mother pushing a stroller, Mr. Chen chatted with a student buying a used textbook. The air felt full of movement, of stories in motion. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just about winning a battle or holding on to what was mine. This was about building something stronger in its place. Grandma Rosa had seen it long before I had. In one of her last letters, she'd written, "The best kind of revenge, Linda, is not proving someone wrong. It's creating something so right, so rooted in truth that they can't deny it anymore, not even to themselves." I smiled, letting her words sink into my bones. Later that evening, after the party had wound down and the last of the guests had said their goodbyes, I sat alone in my kitchen. The house was quiet again, but not empty. There were thank you notes on the counter, dishes drying in the rack, baby shower decorations still fluttering from the ceiling. Outside, the city glowed in the early evening light. My phone buzzed, a message from Emily. Just wanted to say thank you, not just for today, for everything. I typed back, "We're just getting started." Before I turned off the lights, I walked over to the window one last time. Both buildings stood tall in the fading sun, windows warm with light, doorways opening and closing as people came home. Not just structures, not just investments. They were homes, spaces where people healed, rebuilt, chose differently. And in that moment, I knew this was my inheritance. Not just the deeds, not just the walls, but the chance to give others what I had fought to find for myself. A place to belong, a place to grow, a place worth keeping. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and rooted in dignity. Linda didn't fight fire with fire. She stood her ground, honored her grandmother's legacy, and built a life based on truth, not approval. Her story reminds us that family doesn't always mean fairness, that healing doesn't come from taking back what was lost, but from creating something better in its place. She didn't just reclaim her home, she reclaimed herself. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, let Linda's journey be a reminder. Your worth isn't up for negotiation. You get to define it on your own terms. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of strength, healing, and second chances. And be sure to click the bell so you never miss an update. Because sometimes all it takes is one story to help us rewrite our own.